Hey guys, Mike here. So today's cult classic review is 1977's Eraserhead, starring Jack Nance as Henry Spencer. In Eraserhead, Henry Spencer tries to survive his industrial environment, his angry girlfriend, and the unbearable screams of his newly born mutant child. And so we have Eraserhead. So guys, this is a movie in this series before watching or reviewing it today. I had not seen it before, nor had I ever heard of this one, until there was someone commented on one of my other videos telling me that I should watch this one. So pretty much only in that regard had I heard of this one before, but really I didn't know anything about it, didn't know anyone who was in it, so, knew nothing about it. So, what do I think of Eraserhead? Well, I gotta say, right from the get-go, Eraserhead is definitely a slow burner. So much so that it's about 10 minutes into the movie until someone actually starts speaking, and then it takes another 10 to 15 minutes for anything to really start happening. And when I say really start happening, I mean basically anything happening. Because I gotta be honest with you, for the longest time, for pretty much most of the duration of this film, hardly anything happens. But I wouldn't necessarily hold that 100% against Eraserhead, because Eraserhead doesn't really seem to be concerned with having an actual narrative. It's one of these movies where it pretty much relies on your own interpretation. Like for me, I just watched the movie and I had to actually look up what the premise was for me to kind of just basically tell you what the premise was. Because without that, I would have just described this movie as long-winded bore fest where a baby doesn't stop screaming. Now, I can appreciate a lot of the symbolism that is in Eraserhead, but for me personally, I've never been a fan of these movies where it relies 100% on your own interpretation, because I don't really think it's the best way of conveying a story. Because I kind of prefer films where they have a very clear narrative of where they're going, and then along the way or at the end or at some point, it allows you to put your own interpretation on it. But it's very clear that they have their own as well, but at the same time, leave it open for you. And that's excellent. But when the movie relies solely on how you're viewing it, that for me is not a good time. Because Eraserhead at times just seems to be explicit for explicit's sake. And I had to look up how they classify this film, and I saw that it was a horror movie. But for the first 30 minutes or so, it didn't really seem like a horror movie. It just seemed more dull and slightly atmospheric, because there's this tension going on for the first act when Henry meets his girlfriend's parents, and throughout that scene hardly anyone speaks, it's all really awkward, and it does mirror how most of these situations would go. And it's made even worse for the viewer when the actors go through two different extremes of acting. They're either dull, lifeless, and have no expression whatsoever, or they're on the complete opposite end, showing all emotions all the time and just basically being weird. And Eraserhead just never really finds a nice balance for me. But then, as you kind of creep into Act 2, you see why it's a bit more of a horror film. And that's when you see Henry's premature baby. That thing is just grotesque. And I gotta say, the animatronics or puppet work or whatever they actually did to bring it to life back in the 70s, well, you know what was really good? Granted, it didn't really have to do much except for cry and move its head every now and then. And then the title as well, Eraserhead. Now, I thought this movie was going to be called Eraserhead because his hair looks like the end of a pencil, a rubber or an eraser. But it's later on you find this is very, very literal. Because through a series of events, his head ends up coming off his body somehow, ends up falling out of a window, and this kid picks it up, takes it to this place, and then there is people there who give him a bit of money for it, and they drill a hole in his head, extract something, put it in a machine, and they basically put the stuff that was inside of his head, or basically was his head, on the end of pencils to make erasers. So, he's an Eraserhead. Whoa, that's so deep, I guess. But I would say that Eraserhead's biggest crime for me, it was just so boring. But honestly, with my issues of leaving open to your own interpretation and solely relying on that, I can be a bit forgiving on those kind of things if what you're putting in front of me is interesting and I can engage with it. But with Eraserhead, it's just, there's not really much to go on. Like I said, the acting's really boring, and a lot of the actual symbolism or freaky images barely seem to go together, and it just seems to be in there for the sake of being in there. And then ultimately, it just kind of just ends. Now, I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, because when it comes to movies like this, if you pretty much don't understand it, or you don't get it, or you don't like it, it means you're not an intelligent person. And I never really tend to agree with those kind of things, because honestly, one person's pure excellent genius is another person's self-indulgent and just stupid. And for me, it definitely leans more this way than that way. So guys, would I consider Eraserhead a personal cult classic, and would I recommend that you guys should see it? Honestly, no, I would not consider this one a personal cult classic, though I can fully 100% appreciate why people consider this one a cult classic. It does dabble in a few interesting concepts, and I do appreciate some of the things it puts forward. But for me personally, I just didn't find any of this entertaining, and it didn't really make me want to think about what this was all about in the end. And as for whether or not you guys should see it, honestly, if I'm going on my personal recommendation, then no, I would not recommend this one. One of the only reasons I can think that I would recommend this one is to say watch it and tell me what you think it's about. Other than that, I can't possibly recommend this one, sorry. Okay guys, that's my cult classic review of Eraserhead. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Whatever you think, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, I've been Michael. See ya!